So today we are going to start a new series regarding grid in CSS, and we will go with step by step approach. We will start from complete basic and we'll cover more some of the most complex topics of grid. And so let's get started. So first of all, I want to tell you the difference between the grid and the flex. When you are using flex, the flex items either can be aligned horizontally on the x-axis or on vertically on the y-axis. You can't align the flex items on both axes at the same time. But when you are building complex layouts like having header, navbar, main content, newsletter, ad section, so in that case we want to use something that allow us to to structure our layout on both axes simultaneously at the same time. So in that case, grid comes into play. In order to start grid, what we have to first think that how we can make a container a grid. So here I have my simple HTML with a container and few boxes. I have given random colors to each box, and then in style I have very basic simple styling. And if you go to our browser, it's like a basic style what we were expecting. So first thing you what you are seeing is that every div is taking the height of its content, so and the rest of the space is left blank. But if I go my on my container, I am saying that display grid. So in this is the property, actual property, which makes the container a grid container, and all these items will be, and all of its item will be grid items. So now if I go to my browser, what will you see is that every item has now been spent, and they have taken available width, like the height that was available and the which was here, it's been taken by those divs. So what happened actually is that when we give display grid to the container, all the items in that container will expand and try to get the available width and the height. In our case, the width was full, so there was no available width here, but there was some height. There was a white patch below that, so the items stretch themselves, and that's the default behavior. So the next thing I want to show you is that how can I define, like currently the columns and rows are not defined by me, but now how I can define that how many rows and columns I want. For that, there is a property in the grid called grid template columns to define the columns, and there are many units to define the columns, but we will talk about those units and the difference between those units in the later video. Currently I just want to make it simple. So my height is 1000 pixel, and that's the fixed height. So what I want to do is that I want to have four columns of 250 pixel each. Okay, so now I know that it's redundancy to write four times or five times 250 pixel and to just copy and paste the value, but we will learn how it can be approached in a better way. So if I go to my browser now, you can immediately see that now I have four columns, and the fifth part, like the fifth item, moved to a new row. I haven't defined rows, so it just created a new row, and the four columns were defined by me. So in order to show you rows and how to define rows, what I am doing here is I am removing two of my parent boxes, child boxes, so that we have eight boxes, because my height of the container is fixed, so it will overflow, and then we will discuss later that what happened if our content get overflow. So now in my style.css I have grid template column 250 pixel, four columns. Now what can I say is that grid template rows, and I want two rows of 500 pixel each. Rows are just horizontal lines, and columns are vertically aligned. Okay, so now if I go to my HTML, like my browser, you can see that I have four columns and two rows. Now this white area is actually here, and we will see, just because our columns are fixed length and fixed height, so they are not spanning completely to to take up the whole space. But now we can see that by defining that column and rows, I have like 4 columns and 2 rows. So in order to wrap up this part, I just want you to show a basic example of how you can use those two properties and make some type of layout out of it. I know we have to cover a lot of it, but I just want to show you that how it can be helpful in real world example. So I have taken one of those examples, and this is a layout. You can imagine it as of a nav bar, a main section, and a footer section. Okay, and it can be a sidebar. It's not a real world example, but I'm just showing you. We can achieve the we can achieve that layout without grid, but with grid it is very easy to achieve that layout, and I just want to show you how it can be achieved. So in my index.html there are 4 boxes, and sorry, 6 boxes, and in style.css I have container with 600 pixel height and width. So before starting or before applying any grid styles, it look like this. Now in order to achieve the grid, first we have to make the container, the grid container, and it can be achieved by display grid. Okay, so now with display grid, it will be the grid container, all of the items will be stretched as we have discussed before. Then what we can do is that grid template column, and with grid template column I 200 and 400. Now why 200 and 400? Just because I have seen that there are 2 columns and one column is slightly smaller than the other column, it's almost half. So I'm just like my total width is 600 pixel, so I have divided into 200 pixel and 400 pixel. Similarly on the raw side, I am just guessing that it might be 100 pixel, it might be 400 pixel, and then 100 pixel. So what I can do is that grid template rows, and it is like 100, 400, and 100. So these will be in pixels. We will learn about more units in the coming series, but currently we are just hanging towards pixels. And now if we see that we have achieved the same layout within minutes, might be in seconds, using grid. So I will end this part here, and we will start learning more complex styles and more complex grid properties in the coming parts, and we will definitely learn about the units used, and how we can make the grid so that it can be adjusted according to the browser height and width. So see you next time.